Hey everybody, welcome back to the Sheepdog Project, brought to you as always by Sheepdog Response, the global leader in making sheepdogs. Make sure you go to our website, sheepdogresponse.com. Check out all of our upcoming courses. September 21st through 23rd, we're going to have a team in Hoffman, North Carolina, teaching a sheepdog level 1 and an occupational level 1 course. We're going to be in Palm Bay, Florida in October, teaching my Spectrum of Tactical Emergency Care level 1 course and an occupational level 1 course. And can't talk about it enough, the week before SHOT Show, we're going to be in Las Vegas, Nevada, teaching a SOTEC course, a sheepdog level 1 course, an occupational level 1 course, and an occupational carbine course. Nothing better than launching your pregame for SHOT Show, hanging out with us in Las Vegas, Nevada. So make sure you go to the website, check it out, sign up for the courses. You won't regret it. Tim, not with me today. Of course, I did tell you guys that he was going to be gone for a little bit, but I have got an A-list of guest hosts to come and sit in Tim's stead. He's shaking his head. He's making a face. But with me in the studio today is star of the silver screen, internet sensation, United States Marine, Jack Mandaville.
I'm only one of those things, Mike.
You're all of those
things. The Marine
things.
thing, you got right. I can't deny that. Yeah.
You're an internet sensation. Come on.
No. I am nowhere near some of the other people I know, much less people at the top tier. I'm just some guy. I'm making a living off of it, so.
Dude, you're making a living off
That's
of it.
all I can ask for, yeah.
That pretty much says it right there. You know, it's funny because the other night, because I was telling my wife that you're going to be on, and she goes, "Well, is Jack like making another movie?" And I said, I don't know. And she goes, what does he do? And I go, I literally think he makes his money off of all the stuff we see on the internet. And I guess I'm right.
A good chunk of it, yeah. Probably at least 50% of it.
Yeah.
And then I do some writing for a couple publications, and I take acting gigs when they come up, and it doesn't pay a lot, but kind of all adds up by the end of the year.
Yeah. So did you? I was going to wait and talk about Range 15. And it's funny because as Tim and I almost never talk about the only time I think Tim and I ever talked about Range 15 is we were together shooting the finale of season 2 of Hunting Hitler when it was coming out on iTunes.
Oh yeah, so about 2 years ago.
So right at the big boom time, and of course you guys dominated. You went to the top on the charts on iTunes, top of the charts on everything else.
Yeah.
What was it like? How long did it take you guys to make the? Once you guys sat down and started making it, but not after the writing and after any crowdfunding, anything like that. When you said day one of shooting, go. How long did it take you guys to make Range 15?
Principal photography was for a 90-page script. It was only about 13 or 14 days of principal photography.
That's hauling.
It was an insane pace.
Yeah.
We were going at it hard.
Yeah.
We were waking up 6 a.m. every morning for those 2 weeks. Yeah.
Wow.
And then usually coming back 8, 9 o'clock at night.
Wow. It's funny because my first experience with anything Hollywood, and I'm making air quotes, of course, was working with the production crew on Hunting Hitler, and I knew. Everybody asked me like a weekend. They're like, "Was it what you expected?" I'm like, I didn't know what to expect, but it was odd that I found working with a shooting crew so much like being on a military operation.
I agree 100% with that statement.
The call sheet is the op order,
yes,
like every day.
Yes.
And everybody's up early. Everybody knows their job. Everybody's in their lane.
A lot of hurry up and wait, too.
A lot of hurry up and wait, yeah, just like the military. But everybody on their mark, and sport personnel doing everything behind the scenes. It's like, oh, blah, blah, go. We'll break for lunch. Walk 20 feet away, walk into a door, and there's chow.
Yep. They feed you a lot better in the with craft services. That's for sure.
Way better. Craft services is way better than MREs.
Oh yeah,
I gotta say.
Best thing about being on any type of television, film set, whatever, is the food is always. I've never had a bad experience.
Yeah. Well, and that's what the thing that got me too is like, this freaked me out even through doing a second season. Is I'd be sitting there and doing OTF interviews or whatever it is, and I'd be like, I'd like make a face and what is it, Mike? Oh, I was looking around. I thought I had a water here, and they get Michael water.
Oh yeah, and you just feel really uncomfortable.
I'm like, no.
I wasn't asking.
Yeah,
I can
I'm
do
like,
it.
I literally think it's in my bag, like 10 feet away. Like, no. And like somebody comes over with a water and like a snack. Like, here.
Some 22-year-old PA.
Yeah, and you're like, no. I didn't need somebody to get my water. Like, I have water.
I went through the same thing when that would happen, where I'd casually say something to myself with full intentions to do it myself before I could even blink. The exact same thing happened. Jack needs a water. No, I can get it. Just point me in the direction.
Yeah. That's I got scolded multiple times because we, of course, on Honey Hitler, multiple times we're picking up and moving locations, sometimes crossing international borders.
Right.
And I can remember being there at baggage claim and seeing, okay, that's clearly a our tripod case. That's clear. And going over and grabbing stuff and piling it up and turning around and the whole crew like looking at me with their mouth hanging open. They're like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm getting the gear unloaded. We want to get the gear unloaded, right? So we can get, you're not supposed to do that.
Yeah. We got union rules here, buddy.
Yeah. Don't, that Tim was the one who had to educate me. He's like, he goes, there's actually a thing too. Like if you damage the equipment, they're screwed.
Yeah.
You know, if one of them damages it because they did something in unloading it, that's fine, but you're not supposed to do that.
Right.
So doing Range 50, was that the first time you did any other than, I mean, I know at Ranger Up, you guys had done a lot of like online skit comedy stuff.
Yeah, we were pumping out like sketch videos for the internet, but nothing of that magnitude.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was like my first time on an actual film set. And it was a film set.
Yeah. Was it surreal? Was it, were you like pinching yourself every day like this is really happening?
It didn't become surreal till right after we were done shooting. At the time, I can't speak for everyone else. I'll speak for myself. Going into it, having never done that before, I knew my lines. Mm-hmm. I knew my lines because we'd been working on that sucker for almost 2 years. But, you know, regarding my performance and all the other, you know, there's other stresses there. Going into it, I was not enjoying the moment. I was just kind of making sure I was doing my job. And it wasn't until like right after, like I was still in LA right after we wrapped when it hit me like, holy crap, that was amazing.
Wow.
Yeah. Like I don't naturally get starstruck either. Uh-huh. So I appreciate that I was working with a guy named William Shatner. I appreciate that I was with Danny Trejo and Keith David, who are all like super pros, super incredible actors and great at what they do. But I don't get starstruck, so I didn't even get to like really absorb that. Actually, the only person I got starstruck over was Dale Dye.
Yeah.
Golly, that guy, people don't realize the reason why more movies don't suck is because of that guy.
Yeah. I interviewed him on this podcast.
Oh, you did?
And yeah, he called in.
Oh,
Even
yeah.
though he actually has a place in Lockhart, which is like right here.
Oh, I didn't know
But
that. I assume he was LA based.
Yeah, well, he is. He's both, you know, best of both worlds. So primarily he has to work. Warriors Inc., I think, is headquartered out of LA.
Yeah, it's got to be.
But when he called in, it's like the hairs on my arms were standing up. I'm like,
Legend.
I'm talking to Dale Dye. Like Legend.
And he's a good actor too.
Oh, he's amazing.
He's not just like a great consultant. He's a great actor.
Yeah. He's really class act. And I need to close the loop and go back and touch base with him because you know he had the project No Better Place to Die.
Oh yes, that was a crowdfunding thing.
And I'm not sure where that is now because he actually he wanted to have. I know when I talked to him, he wanted to have it done and showing by now because he wanted it up for the 75th anniversary of D-Day. We missed that obviously. Yeah. I hope that gets made though because it's a real. I don't know how familiar you are with the story. It's a great story.
I'm not familiar with the story. I mean, I would assume. I mean, considering he was the top consultant for Saving Private Ryan, like if anyone's going to pull that off, it's going to be him.
Yeah.
And he's directed films before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But that's his wheelhouse right there.
Totally.
I know it's a World War II.
Yeah.
I'm assuming Normandy.
So it's 82nd Paratroopers that basically there was a very key bridgehead because of course as the Germans were withdrawing, they were blowing all these bridgeheads and we had to have these bridges for the vehicles to get over.
And that's where the airborne came in.
Yeah. And so them jumping in, getting to these kind of key intersections, key places that were going to be choke points, that were going to be resupply points, and seizing them. And this platoon basically had the job of just taking and holding this one bridge and not letting it be destroyed. And there was a fierce battle. Two guys went out in the middle of the street with an anti-tank, with a bazooka, and basically took out like 2 or 3 Panzers in the open, because that was the only way. The hedgerows were so thick, that was the only way they could do it, was by exposing themselves to fire. So they basically went out in the middle of the road and did this. And the whole story of this platoon is just literally just filled with amazing heroics. It probably epitomizes the 82nd Airborne during the World War II period.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just a great story. So,
and they had already been doing stuff in North Africa too, right? They'd already seen
Sicily.
action, right?
Yeah.
Oh, Sicily?
The first Allied airborne operation ever was actually in Sicily.
Okay. So these were some seasoned guys at this point.
Yeah, they had you had at that point in the war, you had basically 2 sets of people, seasoned people that had been taken out of action for a while to refit and go back in with this. And then you did have some, brand spanking new units. Because like if you look at Band of Brothers, 101st guys, they had been training
for like 2 years
up
at
to
that
2
point,
years.
right?
Yeah, they trained stateside for like a year.
Yeah,
and then we're in the UK
London,
training, getting practice jumps, everything else. So it's the fact that they jumped into combat on the night of D-Day, and virtually everyone in those units, from the lowliest private up to company command level, hadn't seen combat.
And those Germans had.
Yeah. Those Germans had fought to get there, had fought in place, had been fighting the French resistance.
Yeah.
They were some hardened troops in Germany. So
what I liked about that Band of Brothers series, and that's one of those gems that when you can watch it over and over again.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Whenever it's on, you can watch it and just enjoy it. But what I really liked about that is, they get into maybe the third 4 episodes in, and you start seeing the difference between those Toccoa guys, those guys that had been training for 2 years before they even jumped, and then these replacements, right?
Mm-hmm.
They did a whole episode called The Replacements.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And in the way the U.S. military is set up, it's kind of hard to imagine that, because it doesn't work like that anymore, where just new guys show up in the unit out of nowhere, at least at that pace.
Right.
But I really liked that element where it kind of showed like that these guys were so good, not because they'd already seen combat, but because they were so well trained.
Yep. Yeah. And they trained that whole idea, that whole cohort idea of, you're going to show up, you're going to go to the guys you're looking at to your left and right in basic training. Mm-hmm. You're moving on to the next place with, and then moving on to the next place.
Yeah, they don't do it like that anymore.
They don't do it like that anymore. We tried it again. I don't know if the Marine Corps has ever gone through phases of doing it. I know I saw a movie, an old movie, like black and white movie, about the Marine Raiders, where it was something similar to that, where there were cohorts.
Oh, yeah, I can't speak that too much to that, but that they were certainly a special breed. Yeah. I know that the Marine Corps, the way it's been set up, at least since the Vietnam era, and I'm assuming pretty much all post World War II and maybe before that, they don't have boot camp based on MOS. Mm-hmm. So everyone goes to boot camp together, and then they split you out to whatever schools you're going to have to go to from there.
Right.
So you don't really get to know people until you get to your infantry school, and then a lot of those people will go to different units. It breaks up. I'm sure it's kind of the same in the Army. I know that the Army has its infantry basic training. Yeah,
so we have OSIT, which we've had, one-stop unit training, which we've had essentially since the 80s, where, you go to, in fact, the delineation for us from basic training, from boot camp to AIT was, I can remember we did what they call our mid-cycle training test.
Yeah.
We spent our whole day doing that, and it didn't dawn on me, because, and they even call it mid-cycle. So to me, that just says you're halfway through. Well, we're waiting to get on the cattle trucks to go back to the barracks that night. And the senior drill instructor says, well, man, he's starting tomorrow, no more KP duty. He said, we have civilian KPs coming in as of tomorrow, because as of right now, you have all graduated basic training. You start AIT tomorrow.
But it's pretty much the same people.
Yeah, it's exact same people.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the exact, and you're still on Benning. You're living in the same barracks, same bunk.
So nothing changes except no KP duty.
No KP duty. That was literally,
that's not
that
bad.
was literally. I want to say we did mid-cycle test. I don't even think it was a Friday. I think it was like a Wednesday. And it wasn't like, hey, tomorrow y'all are going to get to go to the movie theater and, you know, have your one beer and celebrate your graduated basic. And then I'm pretty sure we just got up the next morning and it's like, okay, you know, now we're going out and doing dismounted patrolling or whatever it was. Yeah, so nothing had changed. But there was a period kind of right after, I went to basic training in 1984. And I think starting right around 85 or 86, the Army tried to go back to that cohort thing. Mm-hmm. And that was, the big push was to fill up the light infantry divisions. So, you know, 7th ID, we had 25th ID in Hawaii, we had the 10th Mountain Division, and they wanted to fill those up, and they wanted to fill them up with cohorts. So that's essentially what it is. Guys went to basic training together. They ended up in their unit together, and then you would probably have like an E5 or freshly promoted E6 squad leader with all brand new mosquito wing privates. And it's like, okay, I got to figure out which two of these are exceptional. They're going to be my team leaders. Mm. And then, you know, eventually I'll get them accelerated promotions to E4,
jumping
to corporal.
right into a rank.
Yeah. And in some way, from, you know, guys that did that, you know, they said, you know, in some ways it was great, but in some ways it was kind of hard too, because it's, you know, you got two roommates. One roommate, you know, these guys have been together since day one. One's excelling and proving himself as a leader, and now he's telling his roommate to buff floors.
Yeah, that's not a good. Yeah, you got to do that early on. You got to separate them early on.
There was a time in the Ranger Battalion where during the time period that I was there, where they said as soon as you make E5, as soon as you make Buck Sergeant, you're going to a different platoon.
I could see that. Yeah,
and I can totally see that. And the reason they didn't do it, I was in a weapons platoon, so we got a waiver for it because you can't take a guy who's been a mortarman or a recoilless rifle gunner, and he's already been doing it for 2 years, and he knows the weapon system, and he knows how to implement it, knows the gun drills and everything else. And then we're going to kick you down here and take a guy who's just been, you know, he was a saw gunner or a grenadier 2 weeks ago, and now he's supposed to be the leader of this weapon system that he doesn't quite understand. So we got a waiver for it. We never had to do it. They did it. I think there was like a 1 year period where they were doing it. They were shuffling guys around. But yeah, it's hard. I mean, you know how it is. You come up with guys, and then all of a sudden you're in charge of the same guys who were pulling you drunk out of the gutter.
Yeah.
Saturday night.
Or vice versa.
Yeah. And now you're telling them what to do.
Yeah. I have a question for you regarding, you said you went in 1984?
Yeah.
So I was having this conversation the other day because I went into the Marines in the early 2000s, and I still remember there was kind of the last, and it was just rare. I only saw it like once, not counting general officers, but like the Vietnam holdover, the guys that were left over from Vietnam. But my first sergeant was one of he went into the Marines in the late 70s, and he was saying the Marine Corps compared to, you know, that time period and now was like a mess post Vietnam. Like, I'm assuming that was branch wide, like, or with every branch. Was the Army post Vietnam for that decade or two after just a complete shit show compared to obviously?
Yeah. So, the horror stories were by 84, things had kind of stabilized. So we were
getting back on track.
Yeah, we were 4 years into the Reagan administration.
Is that when things turned around?
Ronnie was pumping a lot of money in the military. The economy was up, and this is one thing that a lot of people said helped too. Is as the economy improved, you know, because in the 70s we had inflation ran amok. We had
that's right.
We had recession followed by inflation followed by recession, and then we came out of that in the 80s. But the good news was as the economy improved, people came in the military because they wanted to, not because they had to.
Right.
But platoon sergeants and above all still had these horror stories about, because most of them had been around, at that point.
Yeah.
You figure, my platoon sergeant, weapons platoon sergeant at that time was a staff sergeant. So he'd been in about 6 years. And so he'd come in right on the time period that you're talking about. And he'd say, yeah, it was a nightmare. The big army at that time, guys doing drugs in the barracks, selling drugs out of the barracks. Company commanders and first sergeants wouldn't dare set foot in barracks at night.
Really?
Like, there was no such thing as I'm just going to go walk through the barracks in the middle of the night. Because nobody, still the draftee, finishing up the draftee army, nobody wanted to be there. The stigma of Vietnam was still there. So a lot of people didn't, this whole stigma of the military, they didn't want to join. And I don't think we'd quite shaked it off in the big army by that time either, because of course the officers, there was no such thing as getting an officer in Ranger Battalion who went straight through training and came straight to Ranger Battalion, because to be a platoon leader you had to already be a first lieutenant, which means you had to have
had a little infantry experience.
Yeah, you had to have some regular infantry time somewhere else, and they would come and have these stories about the discipline, guys just not showing up to work on Monday morning.
Yeah.
Where are they? Talking about, I'd ask my platoon sergeant, hey, there's 3 people missing. Oh yeah, sir, don't worry about it. I got it covered. What do you mean you got, where are our people?
Yeah.
Oh, they drove down to Fort Lauderdale and things got a little bit crazy. So, they'll probably be back tonight. Shit like that. And they said, shit like that was all the time. This, direction had been lost, discipline had been lost. And it was funny because it wasn't that in the Ranger Battalion, we were doing superhuman things at that time, but we adhered to strict military discipline.
Yeah, it was always a cut above, right?
Yes,
that's always been.
It's, you stood at parade rest when you talked to an NCO, you stood at attention when you talked to an officer, you rendered the greeting of the day at all times, you made your bunk every morning, you shined your boots. Your uniform didn't look like you just pulled it out of a duffel bag. Your equipment was set up properly. You took pride in what you did. But yeah, it was an interesting time because there were still just enough of the old Vietnam vets around at that time that the stories were still there.
Yeah.
And you would do a training event and they would be able to reflect on real world experiences they had at that time. Because I can distinctly remember pretty much every company first sergeant had a Vietnam combat patch.
Oh, I would imagine.
Yeah. And of course the battalion commander and the battalion sergeant major were both Vietnam veterans.
Yeah.
So they knew, especially when we went to Panama and did jungle training, it's like, this is, every night, when you were done, it's, these are the drive home lessons from today.
Yeah.
That you have to remember. That's so weird. How old are you?
About to be 35.
Damn.
Yeah.
You're so young. In fact,
I get told I'm old, so it's all perspective.
When I talk to guys like you and Tim, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I went in 2000," or people that I hear talking about, went in 98. It just it boggles my mind. My first after I got out of med school and residency, and I got assigned to the unit, my first trip to Iraq. First night rolling out on target with a bunch of Rangers, and one of the guys, we're in the back of the striker, and one of the guys goes, "Hey, sir, I heard you used to be in this battalion." I said, "Oh yeah, I was here, 84 to 88.
Yeah.
And it gets really quiet. The squad leader goes, "I was born in 1986," and he's the oldest guy on there. I'm like, damn.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was visiting the troops around last Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
I was overseas, so I was just, seeing all these troops all at once, all these bases, and it just really hit me like how I looked at some of them and they look like babies to me. Like I'm at that age where if I see an 18-year-old in uniform, I'm like, that's a child.
Yeah. Did you have a permission slip to go to basic training?
Yeah. It's but who else are you gonna, you can't convince a 25-year-old to go to most of the time to do what's asked of you in the military.
Yeah.
So 18's the age.
Yeah. 18 is the age. So you were 18 when you went in?
Yeah.
Yeah. Where are you from originally?
I grew up in Minnesota.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm born out in LA, but I consider myself a Minnesotan. And then went into the Marines, so I was stationed at Camp Pendleton for the better part of those 4 years. And then made my way down to Texas from there.
Yeah.
And I was in Texas for a while, and North Carolina for a while, and then Virginia, and then back to Texas, and yeah.
How many years in the Corps?
Just 4.
Just 4?
Yeah, just 4.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a very, I mean, that's the thing. It's like I always joke that like, it's like I had a very comparatively, like there was nothing special about my service. Like I did the combat thing and all that, but you know, like I don't know. I think it's a lot because I'm around like Medal of Honor recipients and Navy Cross recipients or people that were like Green Berets and SEALs and all that, that I just kind of like, you know, I not only was it very conventional, but like there's just nothing like I always joke when people try to tell me war stories. I always say like, I don't give a shit about your war stories. I don't care about my own war stories. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I don't know.
It's funny that the frame of reference when you talk about that, you know, that's interacting with people that have, you know, the Medal of Honor and things like that. It changes your perspective because, you know, when I think, you know, to me, you were a combat infantry Marine.
Yeah.
I consider that to be a huge deal.
Yeah, I'm not trying to minimize it, but also I've been a civilian for 12 years now. Like, it's hard to explain. Like, for me personally, like, it sounds crazy because I live in this space where it's a topic a lot of the time, right? But at the same time, like, I'm full civilian. Like, I don't think I don't have a military mind anymore in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Like, if you put a gun back in my hand, I know how to, you know, a lot of it's riding a bicycle, but I don't live in that mindset constantly like I used to. So yeah, I mean, I think the only time I really appreciate it is when I get together with my old Marine buddies. And that's when I'm able to reflect more and appreciate things. Yeah. And kind of recreate that period in my head. Yeah.
Well, that's something, I mean, especially, you know, my opinion on that, especially doing it in the formative years that you did it in. You know, those are your
crazy. Wild West.
Your years and I think about, you know, my time from age 18 to 22 in the Ranger Battalion and how that shaped me.
Yeah.
How that, no doubt, shaped my adult life.
Yeah.
And then...
and it does.
Yeah. If there had been a prolonged combat tour in there on top of that, I'm sure it would have even been more impactful.
Yeah.
So, you know, and I think about how that, you know, whether it's something that we acknowledge every day or not, I mean, undoubtedly it's something that shapes us.
Like I mentioned, mostly with my friendships, like my relationships with people, like you know, even if you go to college from 18 to 22, that's going to be an important social period. And for me, it's like most important people I've had in my life are the dudes I served with from that period. Like they're like all the stuff I do on the internet and you know, I've gotten to do some really cool stuff. Their opinion of me is the only one that matters to me. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like when I do certain things, I always say to myself, like, we'll just piss off the guys I serve. I don't care what anybody else thinks, but I will just piss off the dudes I served with.
It's funny that you say that because that's this, for me, I could have a million Twitter followers, a million Instagram, Facebook followers, be on a show that 25 million people see. And at the end of the day, if one guy that I was on a team with or one guy that was in my squad sent me an email and said, I'm embarrassed to say I served with you.
That would kill you.
That would destroy me.
Yes.
That would totally destroy me.
Yes, absolutely. Like you've seen all the am I allowed to swear here, by the way?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You've seen all the shit people talk to you every day on Twitter, and you've probably read comments about the show and all that stuff, right? And like that's nothing, but like people people that you hold sacred, people that you care about deeply, like if their opinion of you truly matters. Yeah. Yeah, and that's how I've just literally gone with that mindset the entire time. Like, you know, so I haven't heard anyone with the immediate people that I serve with say anything bad so far. So I guess I'm doing right. As far as I'm concerned, I'm doing well. Yeah,
the moment that somebody said, "Oh, you betrayed the regiment, or you've sold yourself out, or you've cashed in on your military service and made a mockery of it," those are the things that would be like arrows in my heart.
Yeah.
Everything else, you know, somebody says, hey, Mike, you found Hitler yet? Ha, 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 you know.
Ball busting.
Yeah. Okay, whatever, you know. Or, you know, if it's for somebody who, it's not I think there's levels, right? So it's like some Joe Schmo in his parents' basement, his opinion is completely down here to me. Somebody that I served with and knows me and knows what I'm like in the context of my service, their opinion of me is way up here.
Yeah.
And then you have varying degrees in between.
Your mother, somewhere in there. Yeah.
Experts in their field and whatever, or, another, fellow veteran, but who doesn't necessarily know me. They're in here somewhere. It's all a scale. So interesting. Sounds like we have a very similar outlook on that. I want to jump back to range 15 in a minute.
Yeah.
I get a couple more questions on that. So when, how did you guys think it was going to be received? Did you guys think this is something that'll be like one of those cult movies and only vets are going to watch it? Or what did you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think between as far as the 5 main cast members, I think it was probably a little mixed. Everyone was just, it was all anticipation.
Mm-hmm.
It was all anticipation. It was actually not knowing. It was having hope that like it was going to be received well, and we did the work that we could to set it up. And so when we opened up in the iTunes, we were number 2 in the country.
Mm-hmm.
Number 1 in comedy, number 1 in thriller movies, number 1 in almost every category. But overall, number 2 in the country. We couldn't crack Angry Birds though, so unfortunately.
Yeah, I remember that.
Hey man, those children movies, man.
I remember all the Twitter traffic at the time. People, range 15 rocks. Fuck you, Angry Birds.
Angry Birds. Yeah, we could not. And I don't think. We were a solid number 2 for a few days. But I don't think we came close to Angry Birds. I mean, that was just a runaway hit that time period.
Yeah, I think because every parent, every iPad and phone across the country had downloaded Angry Birds to here, watch this in the back seat and shut up.
Yep.
And it's funny because that's actually, I watched Range 15 on my iPad in the back seat. We had like a 3-hour drive across Chile to get from point A to point B.
Did you like it?
I loved it. Yeah, so
you
I watched.
You knew Tim though.
Tim was sitting next to me. And it was funny because every time he'd hear me laughing and he'd look to see which scene I was watching when I laughed.
I've noticed people. I mean, I had to go to so many screenings of that I started to hate seeing myself. I had to drink my way through the movie because you watch the same. I mean, even if you're in the movie, you can't watch the same movie. Like 7 days a week for a couple months straight. You'll start resenting the movie.
Yeah,
and that's what happened. I'd have to like drink. But what I've noticed, people generally all laughed at the same things. Certain scenes will get chuckles, depending on people's personal preferences. But the big laugh scenes were all, I noticed, the same scenes in that.
Is there anything about that movie that you thought that you were surprised that people like come to you and say, "I thought this was the funniest part of the movie," or that something that got a huge laugh that you guys thought, oh, that was just maybe a little like a funny inside joke. We didn't think people were going to get that.
Yeah, I can't think of anything off again, like all the laughs kind of just mixed in eventually. People have their favorite characters. So whenever somebody says nice things to me, I was their favorite character, I'm always a little surprised. I'm like, I had the least amount of lines from the main cast. So like, I'm like, that doesn't make sense, but yeah. But yeah, I can't think of anything off the top of my head where it was any scenes I was surprised that got laughs. There's scenes that bombed. Yeah, so
I didn't. Well, and again, I didn't watch it in a theater. I watched it on my iPad. So to me, I felt that I laughed at everywhere that you guys. It was insert laugh here. I'm pretty sure I laughed.
Oh,
pretty much every part of that. So afterwards, and I never asked Tim this, but I want to ask you this. So did you get a SAG card out of that?
No.
You don't have a Screen Actors Guild card?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, because I thought that's all you had to do. Because is have a speaking line where you're in frame was like the only was because I remember Dale Dye when he came on my show.
Yeah,
he said he told me whatever role got him his SAG card.
Yeah.
And I guess that's like a big deal.
I met all the we met all the qualifications. I just think that was like a paperwork thing that didn't happen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't know the details.
I'm sure there's probably dues involved. Like
yeah.
Like I don't belong to any professional doctors organizations. I'm not in the AMA. I'm not in the American College of
So you just don't want to
Physicians.
fork over the money.
Yeah, because it's like I'm like, so like, are you guys about to go? So when I think the NRA is about to go under, I always make sure I renew my membership. But none of these organizations are getting ready to go under. And
what do you get out of it? Like a free newsletter or something like that?
You get discounts when they run like training and stuff like that. You get discounts. And in October, I'm going to the ACEP annual meeting out in San Diego. And depending on if you're a member or not, there's certain parts of the event that you can get into paying less money so you can get continuing medical education credits and only have to pay X amount of dollars for them. But
gotcha.
Typically I don't have any interest in having a leadership role. I kind of think, I don't know, now we're getting a little bit off topic here, but during the whole period of time that the Affordable Care Act was in play, it was hard to pin down which side of that fence certain medical organizations were on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, I'm not going to pay anybody, you need to be you're not supposed to be a political organization. You're supposed to be a doctor's organization representing what's best for us and best for our patients. So you should be able to take a stand and tell me which way the wind blows on this. You're either for it or you're against it. And I thought too many of them had like this wait and see, or, well, we're going to endorse this part of it, but we're not going to endorse that part of it. It's like, well, it's all getting signed into law together. You can't really have it that way. You either endorse it or you don't endorse it. And that just put me off of, there's a lot of politics in medicine, which I don't particularly like. I mean,
it seems like any profession is going to just have bureaucracy and be, in the film industry, just the military, obviously.
Yeah. And medicine, much like other industries, I'm not going to say it doesn't happen, but it's rare that you see the absolute best clinician or the absolute best surgeon then goes on to become the leader of this organization, because usually that guy or girl, they're practicing, right? I'm practicing medicine. I don't have time to be president of your organization,
right? Because you're running a nonprofit.
Yeah,
at that point, right?
I'm doing heart transplants.
Right.
Sorry, I don't have time to do that.
Hey man, sometimes brain surgeons can end up being the head of HUD. So
you never know. Yeah, you never know. Pediatric brain surgeons at that. So. That is an example.
There's a difference between operating on adults and kids?
Yeah. So you have a lot more, just basically the things that you'll see. So that the types of operations they'll do.
The types of diseases or?
Yeah, so disease process. So like in adults, you figure a lot more of what you're going to be doing is post-injury stuff or obviously cancer. So brain tumors and stuff like that. Where in kids, you're going to be doing all of the congenital defect stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So we're talking about
stuff that you have to nip in the bud.
Yeah, not only huge challenges, because we're talking about undoing what happened congenitally, but also doing surgeries where every surgery you do, you're taking into account the fact that, any little stitch that I put in or shunt that I run or whatever, this person is a quarter the size that they're going to be when they grow. So this is going to have to grow with them. Yeah. Right. So, we talk about kids that outgrow their shunt, because that's one of the most common things is kids that can't drain their cerebrospinal fluid and they run a shunt, and usually they run it down the neck and into the abdomen so it can just drain. So that has to grow with them. That has to stretch and continue to grow. So it has to be extra long. And over time they kink and they break and everything. They get shunt infections, all this other stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's challenging. And I have the utmost respect for any surgeon who specializes in pediatric surgeries, because the level of helplessness that you're going to feel from a family.
Oh my God, yeah. And because no one's going to blame you for grandma dying.
No, you did all you could. Yeah. But little Johnny, who's 8 years old, So there was a saying I heard in med school, and I've always remembered it. And they're talking about malpractice cases. They said, here's the deal. God doesn't kill babies. Only bad doctors kill babies.
Ah.
Like, and it's so easy. John Edwards made his whole, not the psychic, the politician.
Yeah.
Made his whole livelihood
Suing doctors.
as a legal career suing
really?
doctors. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And ironically enough, he is, depending on which terminology you use, pro-abortion or pro-choice, either terminology. But a lot of the arguments that he made were doctors who had bad outcomes during deliveries, either deaths or cerebral palsy or other things of that nature.
So I don't know, cerebral palsy, is that caused by bad medical practices?
No, so some people have tried to link it to prolonged deliveries, and head gets trapped in the birth canal, and baby possibly isn't getting enough
but that
oxygen.
could have happened at any point, right?
Most of it's there are a lot of things that, and that's another thing when it comes to medicine is there's a lot of maladies out there that are strictly congenital that we know. We know, we can identify the genes, okay? In a lot of cases, not all forms of autism, but in a lot of forms of autism, we know exactly which genes and where they come from. There's in a lot of those cases, it's maternal, so from the mother.
Oh wow,
genes.
Really?
Yeah, it's on her. It's on that X chromosome that is causing this particular form of autism.
So,
but then you can't. Then it's mom's fault. So mom cannot possibly be at fault for the fact that little Johnny can't read and write.
You have to change the entire way people think.
It's got to be vaccines.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's got to be big pharma, because a big pharmaceutical company would do that to a baby. God wouldn't do it, and certainly the loving mother's own genetics wouldn't do it, right? And that's not all cases of autism. There are some that can be triggered by some external environmental factors.
Really?
It's autism is
but we have a lot to learn about that.
When we say autism,
it's like the ocean. We don't know shit.
It's like saying back pain. Yeah. It's that there's number one, there's a huge spectrum there.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I get brought up to me by these anti-vaxxers all the time. There's been a huge spike.
Do you deal with those people?
Oh, all the time.
Really?
All the time. So
I always assume it's like, they're like flat earthers, but it's big numbers.
Believe it or not, I dealt with them in the military. So we're talking military families. So free health care.
Oh,
kid might live on post, might go to daycare on post, might go to school on post. And I'm finding out they're
sitting around watching Maury all day who thinks she's the smartest
watching
woman in
the
the
View
room.
and saying, oh, this is where autism comes from. I'm not going to vaccinate my kids.
Oh my! We still haven't gotten educated out of that, because that was debunked years ago. Yeah, right.
It's not only was it debunked, but the main doctor who was pushing that. So incidentally, he's a British doctor, lost his license in the UK. Guess where he lives now?
Where?
Here in Austin.
Is he practicing here?
He's not practicing, but he lives here.
Oh, wow.
So he lives here in Austin. And his name escapes me at the moment, which is probably good, because I don't want people to go put a hit out on him. But I'm 100% sure he lives here in Austin now, because he went and spoke at a couple of things here last year.
Thanks for bringing the measles back, asshole.
Yeah, thanks for the measles. Yeah. So,
oh my God.
And all this other shit. So
bored suburban moms who think they're smarter than doctors.
Pretty much everybody thinks they're smarter than doctors nowadays.
Well, that is true, yeah. Well,
because they have the internet.
Yeah. That's why I've diagnosed myself with HIV at least 7 times. I got to sneeze. I got AIDS. I had sex last week and I'm sneezing now. Crap.
Everybody thinks that the internet, it's like you're just one doctor. That's your brain is however much RAM, but I have access to the whole internet.
Yeah.
So therefore I have all this at my fingertips. So this knows way more than you know. And this is the information age in which we live. So unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. I mean, and there's always, it's armchair quarterbacking. It just gives people, it validates their perceived expertise a lot more now.
Yeah.
The internet does, because they can seek what they want to be told, or they can find what they want to find.
Yeah. Everybody's looking, and you and I started to talk about this a little bit over breakfast the other day, is everybody's in search of something to be angry about. Everybody's in search of something to be incensed about.
Yeah.
It's become this quest. Everyone, God damn it, I have a right to be offended Let me look
And they
online
think
and see what's going to offend me.
themselves being offended somehow is going to change people's behavior, or that it should change people's behavior. If they don't like it, then other people shouldn't be doing it.
Right. Yeah. And that's totally not what this is about.
No.
It's not. Yeah. It's your feelings don't matter. Free speech is free speech.
Yeah.
There is no freedom to not be offended or insulted.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right.
We can, short of shouting fire in a theater, you can do whatever you want in this country.
Yeah.
This whole Alex Jones thing has been interesting because it's been interesting to watch because I'm personally conflicted on it, the whole Alex Jones thing. But what was interesting is Bill Maher went to bat for him.
Yeah.
Because he's a big First Amendment guy. What I respected about that, like he showed complete integrity. He said like, banning Alex Jones means you can ban me whenever you want.
Right.
Like it's a really dangerous road. But also Alex Jones is like, he's caused criminal behavior towards people because he's riled up people that are susceptible to.
There is, and maybe you know specific instances and I don't, but I can legitimately see how that potential is there just from what little I've seen of Alex Jones, that people that already have a tinfoil hat on, he could get their wheels spinning. And
they're going to find it somewhere else, though. Yeah,
exactly. If they're not getting it from him, they will get it from Reddit or some.
They're going to find the information.
They're going to find somebody.
YouTube's not going to ban every conspiracy video.
They're going to find some anonymous source that feeds into what they already think is the truth. And that's what's going to get him spun up. Here's where was my thing. And it's funny because when we had a long hiatus on the podcast and I just came back a couple of shows ago, and the first thing I did was answer some viewer questions and specifically the Alex Jones thing. This was like, I think 2 days after he'd gotten booted off of Facebook. And I said, so here's the deal. I said, Alex Jones has a right to free speech, but he doesn't have the right to use another bit. Like, I don't have a right to that billboard out there.
And that's the argument. Like the same thing with the people who are angry about the NFL protesters are saying, well, if they're doing it on company time, if the company, well, that's applicable to Alex Jones too. Like he's doing it on their platform.
Company time. Yeah. Facebook is
so they can say
company.
Get off if they want. They're not violating his First Amendment rights. It's their platform.
Just like if the NFL, if the individual team owners say you will not kneel, you'll either stay in the locker room or you'll stand.
Yeah.
They're not violating their First Amendment rights because it's a business. So they have a right to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's the thing too. Alex Jones, like, this isn't the government's not cracking down on him.
Yeah. No.
As far as I know, the government hasn't said a thing, hasn't made any.
No, one way or another. Yeah. I mean, even when Zuckerberg went up and testified before Congress, kind of the opposite was what the push was, are you censoring people? You shouldn't be censoring people. But there wasn't any, but we're going to come in, now we're going to be the government because then we'd be censoring you. You know, there was a lot of political grandstanding, but no threats of anybody specifically doing that. And the case, the case that I kind of drew a parallel to too, I said, if you support the baker who wouldn't bake a gay wedding cake, then you have to support Facebook. Because Alex Jones is their gay wedding cake. Yeah. They're choosing not to do business. You know, there used to be signs, and you're old enough to remember this, that you would go in anywhere and it would say, we reserve the right to refuse service to anyone for any reason.
Yeah, though people don't have those signs anymore?
I never see them anymore.
I see like no shirts, no shoes type signs.
But it used to be,
I guess
if you walked in and you were, waiting in line to get a hamburger and you were cussing and they didn't like it, they could say, get out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Back in the 60s, it was long hairs need not apply.
Yeah. If your hair's touching your collar, your hair's too long. Yeah, and you can't. So have you ever been is Knott's Berry Farm still around in California?
I believe so.
So Knott's Berry Farm was infamous in the 70s that they would have people go out, and while people were standing in line to get into Knott's Berry Farm, they would single people out and say, you're not welcome in the park. Like
what was their
hippies? They didn't want hippies in the park.
Oh my God, really? Yeah. I didn't know that. That Charles Schultz, that real man, he wasn't a big fan of them hippies.
Yeah. So they'd kick you out of line, say you weren't welcome in the park on that day.
Wow.
Yeah. It's I can remember hearing about that as a kid. My parents are Southern California hippies. So most
Yeah.
of their friends were.
What part of SoCal?
So I was born in Redondo Beach.
Okay. I was born in Culver City.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I spent my formative years in Tehachapi, California.
We had. I don't know where that is. We had this conversation the other day. Yeah.
Nobody knows where that is. So it's 40 minutes east of Bakersfield.
Oh, that
on the Grapevine. Yeah.
That California.
That California.
Yeah.
Hillbilly California.
That's the California that people don't see.
They don't like
to
talk about at parties.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's kind of,
Yeah. It's a whole nother California.
Yeah. People, that's what I always get. What bothers me the most is, and I've seen people do this to Texas. I always have to, it's kind of the same spiel, but when I see people talk shit about California, like just, they'll just like, oh, it's California. They see something they don't like in the news. Oh, that's California. Or, like, why wouldn't that place just fall into the ocean? I'm just like, yo, there's 43 million people in that state. And that state is not LA and the Bay Area. Like there's so much diversity in that state as far as politically, economically, just, like, again, like, they don't know anything about a place like Redding or Bakersfield or, for that matter, people don't know about, unless you're from California, you don't know about Palm Springs. You know what I mean?
Yeah, or Bishop or Mammoth or
all the other
Fresno or Mojave.
San Jose. Yeah. Well, San Jose, you'd clump that in, I guess, with the Bay Area. But yeah, it's like the country, people in the mountains up there. Like, there's a lot going on in that state to clump everybody together because you don't like what somebody from LA said. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What did you think of the idea of splitting California into 3 different states?
Well, I love disruption.
Yeah.
That's just I love watching disruption happen. I don't know how it would impact them economically. I don't know if it would make America stronger. I don't know what impact it would have on us as a whole.
The net. So the way they were talking about doing it, like if they split I believe from what I saw,
that's a big split. It was 4 parts, right?
I saw 3.
Oh, 3? Okay.
I saw 3. So basically what it was Inland Empire, the whole thing as one, and then there would be 2 coastal, northern and southern. So basically what you would end up with, it would be net. So if you're looking at like electoral college votes and everything else, I think it would be a net 0 because you would end up with, instead of having one big California that always goes left, you would have 2 smaller Californias that both go left, but then you would have the one California that would always go right. The Inland Empire always going right. Where all the farmers and everyone, where my people are from, right? So it'd be a net 0 because you'd add one, but then it would get nullified by the conservative one. So it really wouldn't do anything at the end. And I don't know. The big question was, so does that mean that now one state is going to be charging another state for water?
That's another thing is they'll have to, like, how do you go from having your system for so long to, now we have to do trade with each other? Yeah. And that, how do you set that up? It's funny because Shapiro was talking about this, that originally basically all the federal government was supposed to do was settle disputes among states. Yeah, and have a standing army.
Right.
That was it.
Yeah, and like, no, you can't do that.
Yeah.
No, you can't move your border. No, you can't charge, a ridiculous amount. Like interstate tariffs. You can't do stuff like that.
Because some states could, and that's a good thing, because some states could take advantage of other states.
Oh, easily. Yeah, states with more natural resources could totally abuse the states that don't have the natural resources, like water or or food or whatever it is.
California's on the coast and they don't have it, so.
Yeah, it used to be that at one time the San Joaquin Valley grew like 50% of the nation's produce. It was something, something ridiculous. That was back, I think, in the early '80s. I don't think it's that way now. I think it's a little bit more balanced throughout the nation now. But I remember hearing it was like 30% or 50%.
It's huge.
Dairy farming, huge.
It's the #1 dairy state.
Yeah,
it's not Wisconsin. It's California.
Yeah, and it's just by virtue of how much land mass they have. Interesting. Yeah, politics. I don't think they would definitely have probably a better shot at splitting into 3 states than they would at seceding. It's funny that I think it's incredibly humorous though that the same people who were telling Texas during the Obama administration, you can't secede, we've already determined, the Civil War settled that. As soon as Trump got elected, were the people that turned on their heel, and now it's like, I think California should secede.
I know it is. Yeah, I mean, I'm old enough to realize at this point, like through every presidency, you're gonna have like these hypocritical shifts where people basically are becoming what they hated from the last administration.
Oh, yeah. Well, the Biden rule and everything else. You know, the can we elect can we confirm a Supreme Court justice now or not? You know, the Biden rule, the what do they call it? The nuclear option, where you can pass stuff through that can't be filibustered.
Yeah.
You know, the Democrats use the nuclear option, so they put it in place. So, but now when the Republicans use it, it's not fair.
Yeah.
You know, it's I'm really glad I'm not in politics.
Oh my God. I lived in DC. You know what, Paul? I lived in DC for a year, or no, I lived across I'm in Alexandria, there across the river, but in that community, and I don't even hate politicians at this point. I hate politicos. Washington DC is Los Angeles with suits.
Yeah,
that's all it is.
Yeah,
it's the same level. Yeah, and worse weather. Worse weather. Yeah. It's the same level of narcissism throughout that town. I've never seen a town where so many people try to one-up each other. They name drop. They take advantage of social situations to harm other people. I've never seen I don't know if they've studied this or anything, but I guarantee you would find a high concentration of sociopaths around the Beltway there. And I was just around those Politico people. Like, I'm just the most, and this is regardless of political affiliation, the type of people that are drawn to that line of work. Not all of them. That's not fair to say, but a disproportionately high amount of people are just absolutely sociopathic who live in DC.
Yeah. I saw that even a little bit among, I went to the Uniformed Services University in Bethesda.
Oh yeah, you lived out there, yeah.
Yeah, so I lived in Montgomery County. I lived in Rockville, but among some of the people in the school, because of course the whole military National Capital Authority thing is all interrelated, and I worked with I had a number of faculty who had been White House physicians, or had been on, people that had been on details that had to do with the politics and everything of the area. And I remember an email going out that, we want, we have 5 slots available for military service members with kids to go to the annual White House Easter egg hunt. Respond to this email, put your name, and just the knives coming out. People, wanting to get into this and get seen,
just so they can get a picture of themselves shaking hands with the president. And and just so they can use it as power over other people.
Yeah, and people planning clinical rotations, trying to get these clinical rotations where I'm going to be seeing members of Congress or high-ranking flag officers or whatever. And I can remember one of my classmates coming back from a clinical rotation and talking, not violating any patient privacy, but telling me that, one of the patients was a General so-and-so who I didn't know who the hell he was, and literally was talking about he'd met like Tyler from Aerosmith or something. It's like, what's the big deal, dude? It's so you saw a general today for his shingles or whatever.
He's got balls and poops, and he's got all the same problems. Yeah.
But the people that starts to matter to, that being in those circles and getting those jobs, and we've all seen the people in the military that do it, that try to get those jobs,
and you can spot them very early on.
Yeah, and you definitely see it, in that proximity to the flagpole, you see it a lot more.
Yeah,
and
because I would imagine most people are out there because they're drawn to getting onto some sort of fancy detail or something like that.
There's a lot. There are a lot of people out there, especially, I'm not saying, people that went to USIS, but people that choose to stay in the National Capital area. There are a lot of them that are kind of on a pipeline for that, and that's what they want.
Yeah.
And both at Walter Reed and at Walter Reed's being torn down now, and at Bethesda Naval, there's a whole area of that hospital that's like, if the president comes here, this is where the president will be. This will be his room. When he's not there, there might be, a general officer there or some other well-known politician. And people like literally fighting to have access to that area of the hospital so they can get FaceTime with these people and everything.
Desperation.
Else.
It's desperation.
It's like, dude, there's nothing. Why?
And let your work speak for itself.
Yeah. It to me, it was never anything I understood. And it was funny because as specifically working at Walter Reed as a medical student, I was required to wear what I like to call the short coat of shame. So typically a doctor wears the white coat that goes down to about mid-calf. Medical students wear the waist length.
Oh, it's like identifying who the boots are.
Yeah. So you'd wear that in your Class B uniform, right? And I had to work at one point. I had a patient when I was doing inpatient wards in the VIP section of Walter Reed, but med students aren't allowed there. Because the VIP patients don't want to be seen by medical students.
No, absolutely not. I mean, if I was a VIP status, I wouldn't want to be either.
Yeah, exactly. So, but what I would do is as you came up to the VIP section, and it's the same area. I'm not giving away any national secrets, and Walter Reed's getting torn down now anyway. There's legit security there. Like there's doors that you are unbreachable. And there's a camera, and you stand in front of the camera, and you identify yourself, and you get buzzed in. That's in case that has to get bunkered down that the president is in there, and the Secret Service is running it, right? But they run it that way all the time. So as I would come on the approach from around the corner, there was a potted plant right there, and I would take off the short coat of shame, and I would put it in the potted plant, and then I would walk around the corner in front of the camera, and I would buzz, and I wouldn't say, third-year medical student Mike Simpson. I would say, Lieutenant Simpson. And they would just buzz me through.
Really?
Yeah, because they didn't know I could have been a PA, I could have been a nurse, I could have been a physical therapist, and they would buzz me through.
So security's not that great.
Security's not that great. Yeah. I'm sure when the big man shows up.
Well, actually, I was at the White House, and I got way closer to the president than I should have been. And
just by mistake?
No, I don't think there was any rules that were broken. I was just surprising how close I could get to him. Getting in to the property is an insane amount of security, insane amount of checks. You're going through like 3 phases just to get onto the property. But once you're on the property, I mean, they have that badge system, right? And I was getting a tour by one of the higher level badge people, but there's this famous corridor that goes beside the Oval Office into, I think it's the West Wing there. You see all the pictures of every president walking down that corridor with, world leaders or aides or whatever. I think it's some fancy name. But I had just gone up to around where the Oval Office was, and we had gone into the West Wing, and then we're walking back, and it's just me and this one other person. There's 2 Secret Service agents standing at this doorway, probably like 20, 30 feet away from me. And then literally, like 20 feet away from me is the windows open to the Oval Office, and he's just standing there talking to Paul Ryan in the office, like from me to that guitar right there. Like I'm like, and it's just a Secret Service agent standing right next to the door, and he's like watching me look at the president. I'm like, I don't have a badge on. Anybody gonna say anything about me standing here watching this encounter? It's pretty crazy.
I guess they figure if you made it to that point, then the screening.
Yeah, see, right? Yeah. I mean, I went through all the normal process, and I was with someone who had the right badge, so I guess but like, it was weird how close I was around, and I was watching him in an intimate moment. This wasn't some setup moment. I'm watching him working in his office, chatting with the Speaker of the House.
Yeah, it was you and Omarosa's tape recorder. That was
that was it. Yeah, I was actually the one walking around recording everything. A lot of people don't realize that. I work for Omarosa. She's not a great boss, but she pays well. Yeah.
as long as you don't mind the ethical dilemmas.
Yeah. You know, her one thing with me is, Jack, don't say the N word. I say, oh, done. I'm good. All right.
How could, speaking of Omarosa, how could anybody have not seen this coming?
She has been reckless.
She's a complete train wreck.
She's a train wreck.
She's been a train wreck.
That's why she was so entertaining.
Yeah.
She was a violent, and she was a mean person.
Yeah.
She's vindictive.
Yeah, mean, vindictive. And I was never a fan of The Apprentice.
I've never even watched it. Yeah.
But I've seen like 2 or 3 clips with her where it's she's basically the private that when you're unloading the truck, you're like, hey, where'd Jim go?
The skater, yeah.
Right. And then and now we've unloaded the truck. And then Jim shows up. Oh, the first sergeant called me over.
Yeah. Yeah. By the way, first sergeant, we are all done here.
Yeah.
I made sure they stayed on pace.
Yeah. We're good. I think we deserve a 3-day pass.
Yeah. Yeah. She is. That's not a kind person.
No.
I don't know. Maybe he thought like I'm immune from her bullshit. I don't know. Like maybe he just was way too confident.
You know what? The guy does, and I voted for him. And I don't care who knows it, but the guy does have a huge ego, and I think he thinks, it drives me crazy when Rosie O'Donnell and all these other people say it's like, oh, multiple psychologists and psychiatrists have weighed in, and he's clearly got these conditions, and he should be removed. No, he doesn't clearly have any.
He's got
of those
a big
conditions.
ego. He's probably narcissistic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Undoubtedly.
Yeah.
And one thing he does do, I'm going to say this, and I might get hate emails for it. So he does something that in psychology we call splitting, in that everyone is either he's the best, he's the best person for this job ever, or he's a dog, he's the worst, never should have had that job.
No nuance.
Yeah, there's no he's an all right. No one's an all right guy, or he's done a pretty good job. He's the best ever. Or he's a crook. He never should have the job. He splits. He splits everybody into these 2 camps. They're the best ever, or they're the worst ever.
That's the last thing our country needs is to look at our fellow Americans in that way.
In some respects, like, and
politically, it's smart.
Yeah, we talked about DC. That's one of the problems with DC is there is a little bit too much nuance because
the Trump people there.
Yeah.
So the the way it's always been. You're right. They know the game there. Even though one person may be working for a Democrat,
right,
and the other person
they're having dinner and drinks together.
They're doing their thing together.
They're in Georgetown having a beer.
The Trump people are, from what I understand in a historical context, they are not well liked in that town.
No, and that was one of the things that I said leading up to the election. Was my big worry was. I'm like, I really like the fact that everything was getting shaken up politically because I think it needs it. Because I think, the fact that 2 people on C-SPAN will be yelling at each other in a hearing and they have dinner at each other's house that night.
It's a game.
Yeah, it's a game.
It's a show. It's a stage.
Right. It's like, I got to say what I got to, that's why I hate congressional hearings because it's like, I'm going to ask completely non-substantive gotcha questions to this person because these are the sound bites I want to run in my political ad when I come up for re-election. It doesn't have any impact on anything. 90% of congressional hearings, they had a congressional hearing because of Janet Jackson's nip slip at the Super Bowl.
Oh my God. In hindsight, isn't that absolutely ridiculous?
It's absolutely ridiculous. And the thing is and what happened from that?
Baseball players.
Did anybody get on steroids? They had congressional hearings on steroids in baseball, okay, that had no impact on anything. And by the way,
it doesn't impact our culture.
Henry Waxman, who was the chair of that committee,
son of a bitch,
who was the chair of that committee, who didn't know steroids were illegal in baseball when asked it. I don't know if you ever saw the documentary Better, Stronger, Faster.
I know who Henry Waxman is, or Harry Waxman.
Complete moron.
You can't get that guy's face out of your head.
Yeah. His ugliness is only exceeded by his stupidity.
Oh my God.
But my big worry going up to this was that Trump was going to piss off so many people that nobody would do business with him. And kind of like you're saying that Trump and the Trump camp would be so alienated that it would then vapor lock everything. It's like the only thing that would unite the left and the right was their hatred of him.
That's what happened to Jesse Ventura in Minnesota. And I'm not saying he was a good governor or bad governor, but
no, he pissed off everybody.
He pissed off the entire establishment,
and nobody nobody wanted to work with him.
They shut him out.
Yeah.
That was the closest. Politics in Minnesota is a lot different than you're going to find in other states, but still, you've never seen Democrats and Republicans so publicly close with each other.
Yeah.
Other than when Jesse Ventura was governor.
Yeah, I'm surprised that the Trump administration has been able to accomplish as much as they have, and that's what one thing.
Internationally, he's the minus the Putin thing, but internationally, he's well,
and that
diplomacy wise, actually, I'm not even going to comment on that, man, because that's nuanced, man. Because the stuff with Iran and Russia is not used. It's I don't know. I'm going to keep my opinion.
Well, dude, there's so much about international relations that you just don't know. You know, people sitting down to peace tables and signing documents might mean absolutely nothing.
It could be purely, purely
somebody threatening to destroy you with scorched earth, while meanwhile we know in satellite photos they're dismantling their shit. I mean, that's a totally different thing. Yeah. It's totally and those politicians. Kim says what he thinks the Korean people want to hear.
Yeah.
Putin says what he thinks the Russian people want to hear. Whoever's running Iran this week says what he thinks the people of Iran want to hear. And
Iranians, from what I understand, are extremely democratic people.
Yeah.
It's weird that they are stuck in the government they've been stuck in so long. From what I understand, like very, very democratic people. Like there's a burning there in those people that unfortunately they've been stuck in this weird system for a long time.
Yeah, I think you have to wonder if maybe if 2 to 3 years before because the Shah got ousted once and we got him back in. You have to wonder if and I'm old enough to remember. So the Iranian hostage crisis, I was in junior high school. So and I still remember to this day sitting in class and them announcing over the PA system when the plane took off to bring the hostages home.
Everyone's going crazy.
Yeah, I still remember that.
Yeah.
I remember being in class and them announcing that. You have to wonder if in 78 we would have gone into the Shah and go, all right, man, here's the deal. I want you to look at what they do in Europe. I want you to look at their government, because basically that's what you're about to have.
Yeah.
Like you're still going to get to wear your medals and your throne and all that stuff. And, you're going to, review the troops and all that stuff. But we need to set you up with a different form of government. It was a different time, though. And you look at Iran's proximity to the Soviet Union, and they were the big threat. And we didn't want to lose that.
Yeah.
Again, we
that
were
big chess game.
We were fresh off of Vietnam.
Yeah.
We were fresh off, the domino theory in Asia it wasn't all of these countries fell and became communist.
It didn't happen.
But what did happen is they all fell into disarray. Because you look at Pol Pot and everything that came out of that. Southeast Asia was still a mess. 4 or 5 years after we left Saigon.
We were just basically there to be a part of another country's civil war, essentially.
Yeah. And that was still a mess. And it's like, and now with everything that, everything that was going on in the West Bank, everything that was going on in Beirut, and now you have Iran close, border nation with the Soviet Union, historically, a lot of Russian influence in that country. And are we going to just give it up?
Yeah.
And so we propped up the Shah for as long as we could. It's, we could do a whole show just talking about diplomatic buffoonery in the 20th century. We could do a show just on that.
Yeah, and as Americans, we have made some small problems a lot worse. And then we did things that we never could even foresee, so you can't even blame us for doing it but we forget, we're the reason why Al-Qaeda exists. That it doesn't what happened in the 80s with the way that we funded the Mujahideen to take out the Russians in Afghanistan was brilliant. And it worked. There's no way you could have seen them eventually morphing into Al-Qaeda, but that's unfortunately what happened. We also gave Saddam the weapons that he used to take over Kuwait and then eventually shoot at Americans.
Right, because what had happened is,
we had a problem.
We lost Iran.
Yeah.
So, hey, let's back this neighbor with a Q.
Yeah.
We'll see how he works out.
Yeah, and again, those are things that you couldn't foresee in hindsight. You're like, oh, we shouldn't have done that. And then there are some things that, like getting into Vietnam, where you're like, that was one bad call after another.
Have you seen that Netflix series?
Which one?
On Vietnam?
Oh no, everyone says it's really great.
So good. It's frustrating to watch though, because of that. Because you see at every turn.
Is that the Ken Burns one?
Yes. It's
he's brilliant.
It's like, here was a key decision point where we could have, and we didn't.
Yeah.
And here was another key decision point, and we didn't.
Do you think it's a lot of the higher officers at that time were just way too overconfident coming out of World War II? Or we just didn't have.
I think there was some of that. Just the idea that we had such a strong military and technology, and the idea that rice farmers in sandals could kick our ass.
Yeah.
And the only time that we'd ever fought on that kind of terrain, if you look in the Pacific theater, parts of Burma, because even in the island hopping strategy, which I'm sure,
we were fighting conventional forces at the end of the day.
We were fighting conventional forces who were also invading forces. Yeah. Because the Japanese had invaded.
Right, we had indigenous help and everything like that. Yeah.
So it was easy to go and take all that back.
Yeah. And then we just here's yours again. We're going to put a little post there. We're not leaving.
Yeah. If we would have been fighting a civil war in any of those, it probably, fighting in the jungle, fighting a civil war, talk about nuanced.
Yeah.
Talking about something that was incredibly nuanced.
And Gap was his name, I believe, who just passed away recently. He was like 110 years old or something like that. He was a brilliant tactician. And again, it was his country. He knew what he was doing,
Well, it's interesting too, because if you watch the Ken Burns documentary, it talks about there was initially when they drove the French out, and Ho Chi Minh got up and gave a victory speech. This was before we had any real involvement over there. Ho Chi Minh gave a victory speech in which there was a CIA agent standing on the dais with him, and he quoted Thomas Jefferson. Talk about a pivotal moment that it could have been, put my arm around your shoulder. Hey, that was a great speech, Ho. Let's talk about your future.
Yeah.
And we could have moved on from there. But the French, who had been our ally in World War II, are beating the drum towards DC, going, look at this. You have no idea what it's like over there. And we had so much invested.
They're savages.
Yeah. And this is what it's like. And it's funny because Ho Chi Minh was a communist who had learned to be a communist in France.
Yeah.
From the French Communist Party.
Yeah.
So it's like, I said after I watched
he wasn't the evil Russian communist that we propped up.
And he tried to get in to see an American delegation on like 2 or 3 different occasions, never got to see him. So then who did he, that's when he started turning to the Chi-Coms and to the Soviets and started to get help from them. But as the war progressed, he was even saying in the North a lot of things like, we shouldn't be doing this, we shouldn't be doing that. And they ended up, his people pushed him out. And so he became like this titular head that he wasn't calling the shots anymore.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's and a lot of people have slammed Ken Burns for the documentary. And there were a couple things about it that I didn't
a
like.
lot of those people were still there, so it's not like doing the Civil War. Like there's going to be personal feelings involved with that.
Absolutely.
You're not going to be able to do a documentary on the Iraq War where people are all going to see it the same because we're just too emotionally attached to it.
Yeah, way too. And I'm sure at some point, probably about 20, 30 years from now, something like that will come out.
Yeah.
And guys like you and me will be doing interviews with the local news saying, what problems we have with the depiction.
Exactly. And that's the thing. It's like we forget. you can't ever have a truly objective look at any historical matter unless basically everyone that was involved with it is dead. And you've looked at all documents from both sides.
Yeah.
You can never have an objective look. Yeah. There's stuff that happened 1,000 years ago that people still debate about and have mixed feelings about.
Yeah, you didn't see a headline that said Civil War veteran walks out of screening of the movie Gettysburg.
Yeah,
like
anger. Yeah.
Now they did, Dunkirk. There was some Brit veteran like got up and walked out of Dunkirk.
Yeah,
because that's what he saw on the screen didn't match his own personal experience.
Right. Yeah, and you they're not going to get it right 100% right. No, 70 years later,
you can't portray everybody's experience.
No, you can't. It's just. And also on the veteran side, and Shakespeare even wrote about this in the St. Crispin's Day speech, or alluded to it. But even on the veteran side, like memories I'm not saying people lie, but their perception. I've seen it with buddies that I served with, like that I was in firefights with. We're talking two completely different perceptions about what happened. Like the way you see things and the more time that goes by, like it can morph into your head. I never had like a bad dream about the war. The only war related dream I ever had where I woke up screaming was something that never even actually happened to me. You know what I mean? So like the brain is tricky like that.
Yeah. There are certain things that you fill in, everything's from your perspective, and you fill in the gaps in what you didn't see. And some of that you do just by, okay, this reasoning, this is how I'm filling in this gap. And some of it is when you were cleaning weapons later on and you hear somebody say something.
Their version of it went into your head.
Their version of it goes into your head. Right. And it's like, and it changes your version of it just ever so slightly.
Yeah.
Till you get to the point later on that you're talking about and you're like, well, was I at this corner of the building or was I at that corner of the building? Was I the first guy into the room? Was I the last guy? Was everybody already dead when I got in the room?
Yeah.
Your perception of it changes a little bit. And it's not because anybody wants to lie. It's because you were running through a traumatic experience with an Instamatic camera and you're trying to splice that together and make it a full-length feature film.
Yeah, and you can't.
Yeah, the only way you can do that is garnering all this stuff from other people.
Yeah.
Talking about that's one thing we're actually doing fine on time because we have pretty much as much time as we want. But one thing I did want to touch on because we've talked about it before is what's your opinion on? I think overall, social media has been positive in the way it has facilitated veteran communications and we've got a whole, which I think you're a very prominent member of, this whole veterans network.
Yes.
We have the prominent veterans.
You have entertainers, you have
entrepreneurs,
political people.
Yeah.
It's crazy, the diversity of occupation and it's become this. I can't imagine it's ever happened in American history where veterans have built this kind of network.
Yeah, I mean,
you've had organizations, but
Rob O'Neill, Marcus Luttrell,
Tim
Kennedy,
and those guys
Nick,
are like mainstream.
Matt,
Marcus Luttrells are like mainstream popular.
Yeah. What do you think? You think overall it's positive? Overall it's negative? Do you think it's a little of both?
I think it's great that there is a space where people can succeed in. Mm-hmm. I don't think veterans are any different than the regular population on the internet. It's anger everywhere. There's a bitterness. There's assholes everywhere. Mm-hmm. But a lot of my comedy comes from making fun of that. It's like the angry veterans, right? And
I've told you this. You've put me in check a couple of times, just not directly, like you didn't,
Yeah, I've never seen it. Nothing
me.
you've ever said has bothered me. I know you're opinionated.
There's things that you have put out there that I'm like, ooh, I'm totally guilty of that.
But that also comes from me having to do my own self-reflection and see like, oh, am I being that guy? That's angry about dumb shit. But like, yeah, I think it's really great. It's just there are veterans with fundamental political differences and what sorry, I woke up at 5 this morning. I'm crashing. There are veterans with fundamental political differences, and I see that headbutting happen a lot, where it's basically you have two people using their veteran cards who are veterans against each other.
Right. They're doing Magic the Gathering at each other. Yeah,
they're throwing just volleys. I'm a veteran. I'm a veteran. I'm a veteran. I'm like, yeah, you're both veterans.
Lightning bolt.
You guys have different political opinions, so beat each other with your ideas and ability to verbalize them.
Right.
Like your veteran status doesn't mean crap when you're arguing with another veteran. And for me too, like it's just, I don't know. That veterans have to like. But the imaginary world is like, man, we just got to all get together and be there for each other, and that's magic. It's not going to happen. We're all human beings. It has nothing to do with us being veterans or anything. Like
there was people that I was in combat with that I don't like.
Yeah, you respect them as soldiers and all that.
Yeah, I respect them. But I don't. And if they showed up to my door and, needed a place to sleep out of the rain and a hot meal, they would be welcome in my home.
Yeah.
But there are people that I served with that I respect, that if they ran for office and somebody came and put a microphone in my face, I would not endorse. I might not slam them.
Yeah.
I might not, I might not swift boat them. Okay.
Yeah.
I might not do that, but
that was your bros turning on you on a very epic level. That swift boating.
And so here's my.
And I don't mean like, hey, whatever their opinion is.
Here's my thing on is I think the people that they use swift boating is like all they're doing is swift boating him, and it's like, as I recall, these were men who served their country who came forward and gave their opinions.
Yeah.
Nothing
and their experience there is as valuable as his is.
Yeah, and nothing they said was later proven to be, they all got together and made up a story.
Right.
So, you're trying to use the word swift boating as this derogatory thing that somehow torpedoes people.
But these are men who'd been civilians, had been out of the military for over 30 years. They had evolved into Americans who had their opinions.
Yeah.
They didn't like that this former person,
and he was the one who made it an issue.
Yes.
He showed up wearing a bomber jacket that he never owned on active duty.
Like he was George Washington crossing the Potomac.
Yeah, and saluting.
Yeah.
So, we'd probably do a whole show. John Kerry, everything from his campaign staged him going out to buy a Harley Davidson.
He might have been a great officer, but I will say this: he does come off as the type of guy that was probably one of those arrogant dudes, like that guy like the guy who shows up on his first day, as a lieutenant, and you say like, oh, this guy's gonna be a fucking problem.
Well, and I did 2 tours in Vietnam. You did a tour on a ship where you never saw the shoreline. Yeah. And then you did 4 months in country on a ship.
You know what? That's what scared. So I went to Iraq 3 times, but I always get, because I haven't been misquoted. I've always been clear with journalists, but they'll say, Jack, 3 combat deployments. And I've literally never said that. I said, no, I've been to Iraq 3 times, but the second time I went there was for like 2 weeks. So I don't count that as like me doing a deployment to Iraq just because I was there for 2 weeks. But like you got to, with that kind of, you have to clarify that. It's on you to clarify that shit. You know what I mean?
Well, that's like, I have 3 big, what I call 3 big GWAT deployments and 2 little GWAT deployments. Yeah. So I have 3, but in the unit I was in, we only did 90-day deployments. So I have 3 90-day deployments, 1 to Iraq, 2 to Afghanistan. Yeah. And then I have 2 brief deployments that were instances where I got a phone call at home and said, hey, we need you to get on a plane and go do some stuff. So I have technically, I have 5 combat GWAT combat tours.
Yeah.
And I don't count. I had multiple times to combat zones in Central and South America that I don't even know how many I have. Times that I got combat pay, I got shot at. I don't claim, and I didn't. And
get that's a different in your world because you come from a. I mean, that's like the nature of your world is doing all that crazy stuff. Like as someone who is very conventional, it's like you quantify a combat deployment based off like minimum, a minimum.
Well, and most people think in the Army, most people hear, when it says on my record I have 5 GWAT deployments, they think of that as being 5 years, 12
the
12
conventional Army
right?
deployment.
Yeah, and I don't have, the number of hash marks that I have. You guys, I don't think you guys don't do. You guys do year hash marks. Do you do combat tour hash marks?
No, just
the 6 month hash
just the length of service.
Yeah, we do 6 month combat zone hash marks, and I've only got a couple of them because it's because of the calendar months that I was there that overlapped.
I gotcha.
You need to go.
I'd probably. Yeah, I was.
You don't have to whisper, man. It's all above.
Okay.
It's all above board.
I thought the show was only an hour, so.
Oh, dude, we can totally go. Yeah,
Okay.
I was just gonna go till we ran out of things to talk about, or till it was
I
inconvenient.
apologize. Yeah, for it in my head, I was like,
No, perfect, man. We can go. Where can people find you online?
I am at on Instagram at JackMandaville. That's Jack Mandaville. Same handle for Twitter, and then I'm on Facebook too. Just type in old Jack Mandaville, and then I have a little column with Task and Purpose as well. So, but what I like about that is they pretty much let me do whatever I want. They're just, yeah, man, the dumber the better, brother. I'm like, all right.
Awesome. Done and done.
Done and done, yeah. They have a lot of journalists, professionally trained journalists over there. They bring in big time guest writers. They've had a couple presidents, I think, guest write for them. And then there's this guy who just makes videos on his phone that they're like, oh yeah, man, 300 words, make a little video. We love it. I really appreciate that.
Well, brother, thank you for coming on. I hope we can do it again sometime.
Thank you so much.
I'll have
Mike.
all your contact information in the show notes.
Appreciate it,
Thank
brother.
you very much,
Thank
my
you so
friend.
much.
All right, everybody, that wraps it up for today. So I'm going to send us out with a quote from the late, great, the man himself, Ronald Reagan. Some people wonder all their lives if they've made a difference. The Marines don't have that problem. Remember that. Until next time, be a sheepdog.
You have been listening to the Sheepdog Project. Follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Sheepdog Response. The views expressed on this podcast are those of the individual and do not represent any larger entity, public or private.